Pecha Kucha 192, Dynamic Anatomy by Burne Hogarth. And a minor disclaimer, there is a little bit of artistic nudity in this week's Pecha Kucha, just so you're aware. So this is going to be entirely about a book I bought over a decade ago, Dynamic Anatomy by Burne Hogarth, when I was in the Forbidden Planet in Croydon before it moved. Just randomly picked it up because it looked cool. It's my go-to for superhero anatomy. Burne Hogarth, I think, is one of those names. If you're looking for art books on Amazon, it's gonna trend pretty quickly. He's a safe pair of hands. A art teacher from the 1950s. The book starts with several written chapters that I've actually only read like this week, most of them. The first chapter dealing with a very truncated history of art from the Renaissance till now. It's very clear he knows what he's talking about. Good luck if you can keep up or you can't. And then the second chapter, he's talking really about modern art shifted away from the human figure as a central, anchor, and now people don't really understand what art is supposed to be about. And then in the third chapter, he looks back over history from before the Renaissance, what the human figure meant for us culturally. This is all art with a capital A stuff. Like I said, I never read this stuff. It's very interesting if you can be bothered. It helps ground effectively why he's published the book. All artists should know this stuff and employ it in their art, is his contention. So chapter 4 is when he actually starts talking about the proportions of the human body using the very well-known kind of head size as the measurement by which you define all other parts of the body. He uses something like an 8 head size. And then the rest of the book is a chapter-by-chapter breakdown of, the body going from the head working down to the feet, starting with the head. First the spatial dimensions, and then the eyes, the nose, the ears respectively. Because I've only got so much time to talk about this, I'll be glossing over certain parts. So there's a bit on the neck, and then he moves on to the upper torso, and as he's showing you various images, he's also kind of explaining certain things about how to anchor certain muscle groups to other places as a form of reference. So after the upper torso, there's the lower torso, the pelvis, the hips, the abdominal muscles, front and back, male and female. A contentious area if you're trying to draw superheroes who are mostly naked, wearing different coloured things, but they don't want to overly detail this. Then he does the back. I so rarely draw people from behind. I know most of the major muscle groups, but there's knowing and then there's proving you knowing, right? So this book is mostly full of male anatomy. There are occasional pages devoted to women, mostly the torso, the hips. That's where women are evidently different. But you should be approaching this book with the idea that it's about male anatomy first, with reference to females only kind of as supplementary. He then moves on to the arm, front and back, biceps, shoulder muscles, forearms. I've always wanted to produce, these kind of tapered muscles, so it's excellent reference for me, although I find I don't make the best use of it. And the book's called Dynamic Anatomy because really it's about muscles in use. There's a lot of images in this book with people flexing their muscles. The idea is you come out of this 200-300 page book with an understanding of how to draw figures in action as well as at rest. Then he moves on to the hand, which is, I've heard it said you have to put as much effort into drawing a single hand as the rest of the human body combined, and I can believe it. My hands are awful, and really Hogarth's hands are kind of the ideal I should be going for, but it's very obvious how much work he puts in. Then he moves down to the legs, upper and lower, front and back. I have a tendency to kind of draw musculature in the legs that extends out of the general form of the leg shape, which is ill-advised. I definitely need to go back to these. He has a very strong kind of mechanical structuring for the foot, looking at it, basically where are the major muscle groups in the bones, how is this the thing that the human body stands on, rests on, applies pressure to, how does this thing handle gravity? And then at the end, after going through the body, he kind of touches on some additional things that would be useful to the artist, how to deal with foreshortening, of course, because you're never just going to draw people standing perfectly upright, perfectly from the front. So, how to taper the musculature of the form so that it creates people moving towards or away from the camera. And he also briefly touches on the idea of drawing characters in perspective. I imagine very much at the time I glossed over this because he's glossing over it, and he's touching on very complicated issues that require a great deal of study to truly grasp. But it's at the back. It's a touching point for looking at other things. And then right at the book, he's got all the muscle groups, all the names. Do you need to know the names? Well, in theory, you want to know everything so that you have the greatest knowledge that you can apply with the greatest level of finesse. But focus on the major muscle groups, and anything superfluous come to as you are working on real projects as you go forward. So, in conclusion, I would say Dynamic Anatomy by Burne Hogarth is excellent for studying muscles of figures as they're using them. That's why they're in all these strange poses. It does go from the head to the toes, but it's really about what I bought it for, superheroes. It's men centric. It does pay some attention to women, but you would need additional resources if that's what you're looking for. A lot of this is idealistic musculature. If you see it at the cover, you look at that knee. No one has a knee like that in the real world. You will need to apply a certain level of restraint in how aggressively you show people to be muscled. One of the biggest problems I've had is I never know where to put this level of detail and where to leave it out. Your mileage may vary. And then right at the back, he mentions foreshortening and perspective. There is a lot more to look into on that. You will need additional resources. But in terms of learning how to draw the human figure in dynamic ways, which is what the book is basically called, you can't go wrong. As long as you're not paying import price on this book, wherever you get it from, even if you choose to rip free PDFs from the internet or buy it off Amazon, I think you can't go wrong. If you're not looking to draw comic books, maybe you don't need this level of anatomical muscular knowledge, but it does help you know how to put things where they're supposed to be, and then you just tone down the overt the shreddedness of the musculature you like, so you can just end up with people who look normal. Alright, so that brings us to the end of Pecha Kucha 192, and I will see you next time.